The prairie winds were still that evening, carrying no song, only a silence so wide and heavy that it seemed to press down on the boards of Colt Merritt's porch, which had grown old under the weight of that quiet. For 10 years he'd sat on that same step at dusk, boots planted firmly in the dust he never bothered to sweep. The sun dipped slowly, bleeding gold across the grasslands like a wound that refused to clot. His cattle had long since stopped grazing at night. His dog, Boone, too old to bark, sat beside him, staring at the horizon as if it might apologize for forgetting him. The silence suited Colt, or at least he'd convinced himself it did. Out here, in this emptiness, no one asked questions. No one reminded him of the boy who'd died in that frozen river. No one called him brother or son or friend. The wind didn't care what he'd lost. It just kept blowing. But tonight, the wind smelled different. There was a faint, metallic scent, coppery sweat, the crushed wild sage carried by frantic footsteps. Boone's ears twitched. At first, Colt thought it might be a deer, but deer didn't stagger. They didn't bleed like that then. Out of the dusk came a figure, a woman, barefoot, limping, half-shadowed by the dying light. She moved like a broken kite caught in a gust. One arm pressed tightly against her ribs, her dress torn at the hem, one shoe missing. Her dark hair hung in thick snarls, her cheeks scraped raw. She was young, maybe in her mid, but there was nothing childlike in her eyes, only that look. The one horses get when they've been whipped too long. She climbed the steps without a word, wavering as though she might collapse backward, then knocked once, hard, on the door. And then she crumpled. He didn't move at first. Not because he was cruel, but because he was afraid the world had finally lost all its logic. No one came out this far. Not since the fire. Not since the town had turned its back on him. Not since he'd buried her. But the blood was real. And Boone, stiff-legged as he was, had already sniffed her boots and windlow, as if urging Colt to remember how to care. He bent down and scooped her into his arms. Her weight startled him, not in heaviness, but in how she didn't. People were supposed to fight gravity. She didn't. Inside, the room still smelled faintly of ash and oilskin. He hadn't changed a thing in 10 years. The same cracked lantern hung by the door. The same quilt lay folded at the end of the couch, where his Matharins embroidered roses. He laid the girl down gently, and for the first time in a decade, he fetched water for Sumian either than himself. She groaned once, soft and slurred. "Don't send me back," she whispered, eyes fluttering. "Back?" he asked, voice rusty for moose. She didn't answer. He cleaned the wound on Hershalder with whiskey, hands shaking so bad he nearly spilled the bottle. It was a deep cut, ragged and angry, like something yanked her away from barbed wire, or worse. She had bruises beneath her collarbone, old ones, blue and sickly. Cole didn't ask who she was, didn't ask why she came. There'd be time for that, or there wouldn't for now. Schwarz bleeding on his couch, and that Minch was his responsibility. He wrapped her in the quilt and stoked the fire. How I averted it. Too much wood, too much heat, but the room hadn't been this warm in years, and he didn't mind the sweat dot gathered at his brow. Boone curled beside the girl like he'd known her in another life. Colt sat back in his old rocking chair and watched her sleep. In the dark, she murmured names. Mama, Caleb, don't leave me. Who was Caleb? A brother, a lover, a man who'd done her. The coyotes howled outside like they did every night. But tonight, the sound felt nearer. He kept the rifle within arm's reach. At dawn, the girl opened her eyes. They were a pale mossa green, the kind that made you feel like spring might be real again. Her voice, "Where am I?" "My place," Hesed. She sat up fast, then winced, clutching her ribs. "You going to take me back?" "No." She blinked at him. "Why not?" "'Cause you knocked." That made her pause. Then faintly she smiled. It was the first smile in that house in 10 years. Her name was Lark. No last name offered, none asked for. Over the next 2 days, she moved slow like the pain taught her patience. She wore one of his old shirts. 2 big sleeves rolled. The bruises faded, but her eyes stayed wary. She asked no questions. Not a booth house, not about him. Not even Wench found the photograph on the mantel, burned at the edges, showing a young woman with laughter in her face. Cole didn't tell her about the fire. Abutho, the town blamed him for it. Abutho, the only woman who ever loved him deed, screaming while he failed to reach. He didn't have to. The air in the house said it for him. One afternoon, she stepped out barefoot into the dust, face turned toward the wide blue sky. The breeze caught her hair. He watched it from the porch, boots propped, hat low. "You always this quiet?" she asked. Hannah'd once. "Not many men would have helped a girl like me." He studied Herthan. Truly looked. The stubborn chin, the faint scar above her brow. The way she stood like someone who never had a safe place and didn't expect this to buy own either. "I ain't most men," he said. The words came easier now, like they'd been waiting. That evening, she found his mother's tin of seeds in the barn. Tomato, squash, roses. She brought them to him. Dirt smudged on her hands. "This place ever have a garden?" Once deed after, the frost took Ma. She nodded like that, explained everything. Then Wiltry again. He didn't say yes, but then next day he brought her gloves. Its hold have stayed peaceful, but nothing good ever stays that way out here. On th 5th day, riders came. 3 men rode, shouldered, dusty. One had a scar down his jaw like a slit throat stitched wrong. They didn't knock. Lark was on the porch scrubbing a pan. She drop-podded when she saw them. Well, Sadie'th, one in the middle. Didn't expect show'd run this far." She stepped back. Colt rose, slow, careful, rifle in hand. "Leave," he said. The men laughed. "That's your _ now." "She's not yours," Colt said, "and she's not mine. She's free. She was bought," the man said. "Fair deal. Paper signed by the sheriff." Colt looked at Lark. Her jaw trembled, but her eyes didn't blink. "They paid my Uncle Shasade. After my mama died. You ran Larky, that makes you stolen property." Colt raised the rifle. "She ain't going any." Scarjaw grinned. "You think own broken down cowboy is going to Boone growled low. The rifles barrel didn't waver. "I ain't alone." Something in Colt's stillness made the men hesitate. They saw it then. Not just a threat, but the man underneath it. The man who'd lost everything and come back meaner than grief. "Put the gun down," the scarred man warned. "Lark, don't," she whispered to Colt. "No blood for me. Not again." He didn't lower the rifle, but he didn't fire. "You've got 10 seconds," he said. "After that, I bury you out back." They left not fast, but not slow either. He stood in silence long after the dust settled, chest heaving. Boone licked Lark's hand. She looked up at Colt with something new in her eyes. Not gratitude, not fear, trust. That night, they ate stew in silence. She peeled potatoes while he stirred the pot. "Why'd you help me?" she asked softly. He paused. "'Cause Yan, and that's all it takes." He looked at her, the fire flickering in her eyes. Sometimes she smiled again. This time it reached her eyes. And in thought-broken down kitchen, something bloomed where sorrow used to sit. Tomorrow they'd plant tomatoes. Butter night they sat close, the fire warm, the wind quieter than it had been in. And for the first time in Adakard, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt waiting,